Pivoting then to the hate speech legislation, obviously it's been hugely controversial. There's been a lot of debate in the media and in public discourse about whether or not this should go ahead. It's obviously been postponed until later in the year. I'm wondering, is there cause for concern with the ambiguity in the legislation, where the fact that hate isn't clearly defined? It says that gender is a protected characteristic, but we don't know how many genders there are. That wasn't enumerated in the bill. This type of thing. Do you understand why people are concerned about that?
Yeah, well, look, the legislation has worked its way through the Dáil. There has been extensive consultation. Look, people's opinions will still be taken into account as it moves through the Dáil. I practiced as a barrister myself before going into the Dáil, and you always and often leave words and legislation up to interpretation by the courts and by the juries, who are often the best placed people to interpret language and what is, I suppose, the real application of that type of language.
But when it comes to the consultation, as you know, I mean, the individual written submissions and the online survey was overwhelmingly negative for the most part. I think about 73% of people said they weren't really happy with this legislation. And from what I can tell, most of the positive consultation responses were from NGOs and campaigning groups that sort of make their bread and butter on this stuff. So is that really something we should be putting heavy stock in then, when the people are saying one thing and state-funded NGOs are saying another?
Yeah, well, look, I have to acknowledge the consultation piece that was available to the public was, I think, on the negative side of it. But I think Minister McEntee will say that she's done a very wide consultation. That was an important part of it, and those concerns will certainly be taken into account. Also consulted with the NGOs, but also through the TDs and the Oireachtas as well. And it's part of what the debate is about, is going through the Dáil, that all of those concerns can be expressed and dealt with. And that's why we have 10 stages in legislation, so that can be considered again and again and again, so we can ensure we do get the legislation right and correct.
Would it be at all worth considering removing this speech part of the legislation and just looking at hate crime? Because from what I read all the consultation responses, and what the vast majority of people said, as I'm sure you know, is that, of course, incitement to violence, which is already a crime, should be illegal. If somebody's calling for somebody to attack another person or a group of people, needless to say, that's off limits and unacceptable. But that if something is just offensive or insulting, there should be no legislation for that. I think that's really where the controversy is coming from. Would the government consider dropping the speech part altogether?
Well, obviously, look, we already do have hate legislation on our books in terms of criminal legislation. I think, look, what we're trying to do here is find that balance. It is absolutely pivotal that people do have that freedom of being able to express themselves, but we have to ensure that vulnerable people are protected as well, and ensuring that that balance is right. Not everybody was going to agree on where that balancing line is, but I think Minister McEntee is certainly, I think, of the view that she has found where that balance is, but of course nobody's going to agree, and I think no matter where it's pitted at, somebody is going to disagree with that. But I think at the moment, I think there is a satisfaction within the government that that balance is there.
Within the government there's the satisfaction?
Yes.
Because again, it seems like I've spoken to many TDs, senior members of government parties, that say they're inundated with backlash and negative emails, deluge of constituents saying that they're deeply unhappy with that. Is that your experience as well?
No, there certainly is very real concern being expressed by people, and I think it's our job as ministers and as TDs to explain why we're doing what we're doing, and that what we're doing is the right balance, and to maybe allay some of those concerns that may be misconceived, but also explain why we're doing it. So I think we have a serious communications job to do over the coming months with the general public.
Thank you so much.